Good evening. This is Group 4 report. The story that we will focus on tonight is a short story by James Joyce entitled Clay. James Joyce, born James Augustine Aloysius Joyce, was born in February 2, 1882 in Dublin, Ireland, and died January 13, 1941 in Zurich, Switzerland. James Joyce is an Irish novelist noted for his experimental use of language and exploration of new literary methods such as the large works of fiction as Ulysses and Finnegan's Wake. Now, the short story titled Clay is part of a 15 short story collection called Dubliners, which was written and first published by James Joyce in 1914. The short stories are depictions of the Irish middle class life in Dublin, Ireland during the early 20th century. The story of Clay tells about the life of Maria, a middle aged unmarried woman working as a kitchen maid who spent a night at her friend's home to celebrate Halloween. The story does not progress much and very little happens to the plot. But here is our correspondent Gabriel Aldave for his take on the plot of the story.
The Clay is a very ambiguous story. Nothing much happens to the plot and there seems to be no climax. It just takes the readers to a night in the life of the main character, Maria, whose life seemed to be of no thrill or excitement because of the fact that she is unmarried. This story is perfect for the approach of readers' response criticism. The context of the story can only be understood when seen at the Irish perspective. Most of the things mentioned in the story are based on their culture, let alone the tradition showed at the latter part of the story. However, those readers who do not come from such culture will be puzzled by the sense of the story, or even show no excitement or satisfaction from reading it. The meaning of the story shall be based upon the understanding of the reader.
Thank you for your take on the story, Mr. Aldave. For those who do not know, the story is about a middle aged woman named Maria who has a job as a maid in a laundry. She goes off to the bakery but was teased by the clerk if she wants some wedding cake. She then buys some penny cakes and big plum cake for Joe and his family to celebrate Halloween, but forgot it and left it behind in the tram she rode after talking to a gentleman. Maria had become ashamed and saddened, but was soon convinced to play a traditional Hallow Eve game with the children, in which objects were placed in saucers, and a blindfolded player has to pick among them. Each object, supposedly a prophetic meaning, and among those objects is a lump of clay which Maria picks, but was allowed to do it again, only to pick a prayer book, which meant a life of spiritual vocation. Near the end, Maria was asked to sing, which she sang, I dreamt that I dwelt in marble halls, from the opera The Bohemian Girl by Michael Bafta, which makes a mistake by singing the first verse twice, though no one corrects her. She skips over the second verse of the song, which signifies that Maria had never had a suitor in his life. The theme of the story seems to be longing for something you don't have, which in this case Maria, a middle-aged woman who looks are less than desirable, has never had a suitor in his life. This is evident in the story as Maria became bashful after being joked about marriage and wanting a wedding cake. She became careless when a gentleman talked to her, and she failed to pick the ring during the Hallow Eve game and picked the clay and then the prayer book next, and finally mistakenly sang the first verse of the song twice, skipping the second verse, which truly signifies the absence of her longing for suitors of her own. Now that we heard the theme of the story, let's talk to another correspondent, Mr. Jefferson Forfieda, for his take on the theme of the story. Jefferson?
The story follows the life of a middle-aged Irish maid named Maria, who throughout the story is constantly reminded of her longing for a married life. The story itself is ambiguous, and though nothing much exciting happens, it does have a lot of symbolisms, such as the lump of clay, the prayer book, the ring, and the sun.
Thank you for that view on the story, Mr. Forfieda. Yes, it is true that there's a lot of symbolisms in this story. The lump of clay, the wedding cake, the song, it all sets up Maria as this character that is desperately longing for love and affection from someone. She has never had a suitor. She's a maid. It basically adds her up as something that is desperate. That's all. Excuse me? Oh. I'm just getting this breaking news that there is another correspondent named John Aldane Reyes that wants to give his take on the story too. Let's go to him now.
The story of clay might be interpreted in different ways. It has a vague meaning, and it doesn't have something exciting or that makes me feel interested about the story. The events are not that different than usual things, very common, and has a monotonous sequence.
Thank you for that monotonous response, Mr. General D. Reyes. Now, for my take on the story, yes, it is true that it is unentertaining, vague, it's kind of blah as a story. But I see it as something a genius would make. Now, bear with me. If you really take a deep dive into the story's plot, if you really understand every word and symbolism that this story has to offer, you will understand that it sets up this character, this desperate, sympathetic character that many people in modern society can relate to. Many people in today's society are unmarried and has no one to love, has no one to court, is not suited. Mostly teachers. This story reminds me of this play that I once watched entitled Waiting for Godot. The story is about two persons and one guy that they are waiting for but never really came, and they distract themselves with various things, and the plot is very vague and unentertaining. But the philosophy of the story was that you have to enjoy life regardless if someone comes or not. Enjoy it, distract yourself, live life to the fullest regardless if that someone that you're waiting for comes or not. Now, I incorporate that philosophy into this story also because Maria has to have that philosophy to be happy in her life. Her character is a desperate maid waiting for someone to suit her. It's pathetic to see her like that, but if you really understand the story, she doesn't really call out to be loved. It's just people giving her the stereotype that she needs to be loved. That's my take on the story. And when you look at the time, that's all the time that we have for tonight. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was entertaining, not vague, not blah. I hope you would leave us a good grade. Thank you for watching. Until next time, I'm your host, John Peter Bautista, along with my correspondents, John Aldane Reyes, Jefferson Forfieda, and Gabriel Aldave. We wish you good luck and good night.